Welcome to Reflections, a program produced by the Outreach Committee of Paducah Cooperative Ministry. My name is Jim Toy. My co-host today is Libby Wade, Rector of Grace Episcopal Church. The current series of programs on reflection is focusing on mission projects that local churches are doing. And today, our guests are going to tell us everything we need to know about a reading camp that was recently held and sponsored by several local churches. Libby, who are our guests today?
Well, it's been my pleasure over the last couple of years to work with over 80 volunteers each year in producing and making Reading Camp happen. And so our three guests today are people who worked in this year's Reading Camp, two of whom also worked last year. So I want to allow you to introduce yourselves to us, tell us which church you're representing, and a little bit about what you did to make Reading Camp a success.
I'm Nancy Black. I attend Grace Episcopal Church, but I have to say that I also grew up at First Presbyterian Church, so I feel I have a double identity sometimes. And it's a lot of fun to just see First Presbyterian teachers in droves come over. My job was as a recruiter of students, and my job starts early and ends early in a sense. And usually about March, I start to call principals of the city schools, and we've had Metropolis students for a couple of years, and basically work with the principals and their designee for talking to students and teachers and gathering in our students for the next year.
So you're responsible for the attendees.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
I am Mary Catherine Zelmer, and I am also a member of Grace Episcopal Church, and I was a counselor for the kids this year. So I was around all over the place. So.
I'm Ann McNeely, and I'm a member of First Presbyterian Church, and I'm a retired school teacher, and so I worked with the learning centers. I was in the Reading Comprehension Center, and we had people in 5 other centers who also taught.
Excellent. That gives us a brief overview of some of the elements of the camp. But this sounds like a big operation. We've identified Grace as a leader in this, and Grace Episcopal, and we've identified First Presbyterian. Was any other churches? We said downtown churches, but were there any other churches or anybody else involved that helped bring the reading camp together? Anybody?
Well, the Methodists were a great help in providing buses. And Broadway Methodist worked with us last year with buses and also providing swimming.
Oh.
So most of the afternoons, I think the children went across the street and had an hour in the swimming pool.
We may hear tales of that
Oh,
later
you
in
may,
the
you
morning
may,
when we talk
you
about
may.
that, but there was a swimming component, which I'm sure they enjoyed.
Right.
So Broadway,
At Broadway.
Methodist was involved
Yes,
also.
yes, and they give us that, that's their contribution.
In kind. They
In
do an
kind, and
transaction.
also whatever costs for the bus, they
And that's,
provide.
I mean,
Huge. It's wonderful.
got to get them there and get them back.
And this year we added Fountain Avenue Methodist Church to our, as a bus provider.
Excellent. So we're talking about a lot of buses here. I think later on we'll learn about the numbers.
We will. And we also reach beyond Paducah this year in terms of involving other people. We had
Really?
2 women from an Episcopal church in Louisville who joined us.
Wow.
And they did some work with camp, but they were observing. Their real role was to observe because they want to start a camp next year in their parish working with Louisville schools. And then our diocesan camp and conference center has provided us with 2 college-age late high school counselors last year and this year as well. So it's been wonderful to branch out in that sense.
Excellent. A collaborative effort, a lot of different folks coming together to make this happen. I think as you drive around in the city and around Paducah during the summer, you see these yard signs, or I have seen these yard signs advertising Vacation Bible School, which at my age goes back to when I was growing up. Is this a Vacation Bible School, or is this something totally different, or is it a... Ann?
No, it's not a Vacation Bible School because it's not teaching Bible literacy. Our focus is reading literacy, although we do some of the same things that you do at Bible school. We have crafts, they have activities, but the focus in the morning hours is on improving reading with children who have sort of fallen through the cracks at the 3rd and 4th grade level. And we want to make sure that before they go on to the middle grades, where there's a lot more need for being able to read in order to be able to learn, we want to catch them now and give them that boost that they need.
So the materials they use are secular, or is there any theological or religious material used? Are the reading materials strictly classroom type materials?
Strictly classroom type material, though we do have a pleasure reading component, and they meet in the church library, and there are some Bible story books in there that the children are welcome to read if they want to, but we're not teaching the Bible, we're teaching reading.
Excellent.
We have a theme every year. Mary Catherine or Nancy or Ann, would you can you talk a bit about the theme and how that's played out in the
Well, this year's theme was outer space. And one day we had like a star room where there's a lot of different astronomy lessons they can learn. And then one day the Skylab came from the community college, and it was a planetarium. It was really neat to see. All the kids were really loving that. So
I think we identified the churches that are participating, but I don't know that we identified where the reading camp took place. Somebody want to tell us about where it happened?
it takes place at Grace Episcopal, and mainly in the parish hall. And then we do activities outside in the playground too, but mainly
And
in
the parish hall is what?
It's just the big meeting room. There's
Okay.
different meetings held there and lots of tables so everyone can get together and
For
talk.
all their activities.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're going to talk about it later. Big focus on reading here, so that makes sense. Did you say there were something about field trips?
Yeah, the afternoon is more of a traditional day camp kind of atmosphere, and we choose a theme each year and develop that theme in decorating the parish hall, and each learning center is decorated. And then in the afternoon, there are field trips and crafts and other activities that are planned around that theme. So could you all tell us a little bit about the themes for last year and this year?
Well, last year, the theme was water, which I thought was a wonderful theme, and it was easily carried out.
Lots of water.
Lots of water. One place they went was the River Discovery Center, I think, and they went on with the simulator and, got familiar with that. I think one of the favorite activities last year was fishing at Noble Park, and I believe it was repeated this year, popular demand. And then at the end of the week, they went to Venture River.
That was going to be my question with the water thing.
Yeah,
I thought
with the water.
a water park had to work in there somehow.
That's right, and I think that's another back by popular request.
And I would think that, did they know they were going there at the end of the week?
Yes.
I think that's a really good design of the thing, the reward for their attendance and participation. Any other field trips on either theme, water or this year's theme?
Well, we go to the pool at the Methodist Church every day too, and that's all they talk about during the day in between lessons. And Venture River is always a big
I bet.
excitement. And I know we did fishing again this year, and they love doing that. And then other days, if we didn't go anywhere, we had arts and crafts, and one day they made little journals and got to decorate it with space stickers and things. But the Skylab was a very big hit. They really enjoyed
The
that.
Skylab came in to you?
It was like, it's like an inflatable, I don't know how to describe it really, just a planetarium.
It's out of this world, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Something else, we've identified the churches, and now we've identified some of the activities. You talk about morning and afternoon, so this was an all-day camp for how many days?
For 5 days.
And they arrived when?
Early, before, I don't know, 8:30, I guess.
between 8:30 and 9.
Between
Yeah.
8:30 and 9, and stayed until 5. And
Well, my
so-
question then immediately becomes, how did you feed them? Because food is always preeminent on my mind.
A lot.
Is this another,
This is another
from-
mission that
Right.
people volunteer to prepare meals and snacks, and there was a lot of attention given to it being healthy food. And I meant to bring in that the swimming, this is another healthy thing that we
Right.
do. It's very important that these children have opportunity for exercise, and it's an opportunity that many of these children wouldn't have,
Right.
not because there aren't pools available, but because their parents often work, and it's hard to find time to take them swimming.
It's always fun to watch on the first day when they do swim tests, and there are only a handful who will even try to do the swim test. And by Thursday, they're almost all in the water and out in the deep end. And it's one of the goals is building self-confidence, and that swimming is a big piece of that and building it.
Do you ever have an experience at the pool with a swimming activity where a kid is afraid and maybe doesn't want to swim? Are they all eager to go? Or have you ever seen one that maybe was afraid at the beginning of the week and was in there going full force by the end of the week?
I was in that exact situation. There was someone told me that this one little girl, she was too afraid to get in the water, and I just swam to the deep end with her back and forth, and she loved it. She had a blast, and I don't know. I heard she really gained a lot of confidence and wanted to swim over and over again.
We're talking about a reading camp, but all these other components are so important. Other very, very positive things that happen for the kids.
Yeah. Shapes them as a person, kind of
Right.
just as a whole.
Very good.
So we're building self-confidence. We're building skills by immersion in what amounts to 3 hours of reading instruction in small groups of no more than 4 with 2 teachers
Wow.
every day. So 15 hours of instruction over the course of the week. And then just surrounding people, these children, with people who love to read, which is hopefully that gets passed on. So, and we can tell by looking at the campers' post surveys versus their pre-camp surveys that they fill out themselves, that in the course of 5 days, almost every one of them will indicate that they like reading better than they did at the beginning and expect to read more. And we just hope that carries over in a boost for the beginning of school every year.
And
Last year we had a student who ended up scoring proficient in reading at the end of the year tests, and we thought that he had all of everything was in place. He just needed a little encouragement and maybe value. What I've noticed is I just think they value reading more when they leave the camp,
That's so important.
and so that helps with motivation. And
I had a very heartwarming experience on the last day. There was one girl who had very low reading scores and who, when she read aloud with me, read very haltingly. And so you wondered how much she really was absorbing. But as I was asking questions on the little book that we had been reading, she knew all of the answers, all of the inferences, all of the fine details. So obviously, she was absorbing a great deal. Even though she still read haltingly, she was learning to listen better.
Well, one of the big benefits of hosting this reflection show is the host learns so much. We're talking about a reading camp, 5-day reading camp that was held recently, collaborative effort between First Presbyterian, Grace Episcopal Church, and some other church with in-kind contributions. And I want to, I think I missed it, but the target group here, the age of the target group is what?
they're rising 4th and 5th graders, so they've just completed 3rd and 4th grade.
Okay.
And I was thinking about them this morning. Can you remember being a 3rd grader? or a fourth grader.
I can't remember yesterday.
Well, I was trying to remember myself, and then as a mother, you remember your children, and so you are watching the stresses and the growth that happens. And I think in the third grade, you become more socially aware, and so there are in groups and out groups, or maybe you're growing fast, and some are great big, and some are little bitty, and then the teachers are testing you, and you're getting measured and written down. And I thought, goodness, this is a wonderful time to be able to come into a place that starts out trying to love you in an empowering kind of way, and saying, each one of you is wonderful and even unique, and you can do this.
Right.
And of course, at the end, they've loved us back, and so we receive the great blessing. But I think this idea of instilling confidence is so powerful at this age, because they're entering into a lot more stressful world than the first grade or the second grade, and their awarenesses are growing. And I think the concept of reading camp is directed at a really good age group for what we're able to do in a week.
Nancy, could you say a bit more about how we interact with the school systems?
I was interested in that too.
Well, last year, I do the city school system, so I can speak to that. We started with the superintendent and made him aware of what we wanted to do, and really asked for his blessing to go to the principals. And so that was granted. And the principals, most of them were able to respond very well, if it was within their power to get this together. This is about March, and reading camp last year was in August, but this year was in July, or no, late July and early July. That was the difference. And what we ask for are rising fourth and fifth graders who don't have great problems, but are reading about a year below grade level and could use this. And so someone in the school usually gets that together and gives me forms, and we get all the information from those forms that we need to buy their school supplies for next year, and buy t-shirts and know the bus routes. It's sort of the information base. But they have been the school systems have been very supportive.
And this year we drew from all of the city elementary schools.
Yes.
One county school and one Illinois school, Southern Illinois school.
That's right.
Yeah. Last year we had 2 little girls from a school in Louisville who were visiting their grandmother in Paducah.
Yes, right. Right.
Found their way to us, but generally speaking, our referrals all come from schools rather than any other kind of registration.
Yes.
basis.
And since this was the second year, I always, when I get the parents' names, I begin to call them, because that's another big part of this is parents are entering in this with us. And the parents that I called whose children had gone last year were really happy to hear from me.
Oh,
And that said to me that had been a good week for them.
it's working.
It's working.
And almost every child who could come back did this year. And I wanted to include that we are supported by a network in the Diocese of Lexington, the Episcopal Diocese of Lexington, which actually began and developed reading camps over the last decade. And this summer there were 6 camps, I believe, in eastern Kentucky, 1 in Cincinnati, 1 in Virginia, ours in Paducah.
Great.
Then there's an international component too, so that there has been for several years, 1 in Grahamstown, South Africa, and this year they added 1 in Liberia. So teams from Lexington help all of these camps get started and then provide some ongoing support for us via email and a conference in the fall for camp coordinators. So, and we've also been blessed to have someone who works in the field of literacy to be our curriculum coordinator and do training for our teachers. All of whom, I think every center had someone who has experience as an elementary school teacher, or in one case, our creative writing teacher has a master's degree in creative writing, and our strategies lead teacher is a young woman working on her PhD in English at UK. So it's an enriched environment in many, many ways.
And another enrichment is that children get to meet children from other places. It's not just the same gang that they'll be going to school with. And I think that that's another enrichment.
There might be a certain freedom in that.
I think
Where
so.
when you're in having taught, when you're in a group of your peers all the time, you tend to behave a certain way. Maybe being with different young people, you can act differently, and you're not judged and you're not known.
That's by design. That is
Excellent.
by design, yeah.
I want to ask a question here, because that's what these programs do. They grow and change constantly. Something that's, you've mentioned, okay, you've got snacks, you've got transportation, you've got T-shirts, you've got school supplies. This camp does not happen magically. There's some support and sponsorship, and there is some money involved.
There is.
Who makes it happen?
She does.
We began last year with a $5,000 grant from a local
Wow.
foundation, which was a
Wow.
really wonderful jump start.
Yeah.
And each of the two camps have cost about $4,000, and a lot of food is actually donated, so that cost is really low. You mentioned school supplies. I would say one of our larger expenses is that each child goes home with a backpack that's tailor-made for that child. It's exactly what's on the school supply list for their school and their grade for the coming year. And then in that book bag is also whatever crafts they've done that week, plus at least 5 books. And
great.
one of our coordinators sits down with each child during the course of the week and asks, what kind of books do you like to read? Would you like to read? And then goes out and purchases them that week to fit that child's interests. So
You have 2 camps at $4,000 each, and you had a $5,000 grant. Well,
the other were, at Grace Church, we've had our Easter offering. Both years has gone to reading camp, and the First Presbyterian has supported with volunteers, and I think is in the process of thinking about contributing some money towards the future.
we need to think about
We
that.
want
We
to
need
stay
to.
ahead, and we want to really develop and be able to add some other camps. The Diocese of Lexington does 2 weeks of overnight camps as well, and that's a potential growth point somewhere along the way. I wonder what other, we just have a few minutes left. Are there any particular stories that you all might tell about how you've been changed by working with Reading Camp? And I'll preface that by saying, as I began with, we've had at least 80 volunteers both years, not counting the people who gave food or gave money. And that's an enormous number, and almost everybody who volunteered last year wanted to volunteer again this year. And that's not been my experience in other church programs. So I know that something's going on in the volunteers' lives as well.
Well, it's certainly a joy to work with such a small number of students, and students who are happy to be there, and so you play off one another, and because they seem to be enjoying what they're doing, you enjoy what you're doing a lot more.
Well, when we first started the reading program, Libby preached a sermon in which she mentioned California prisons being erected based on 3rd grade reading scores. And I think that what we are doing matters in the scheme of things. It matters more than a lot of the other things we do, even in church. And I believe we've caught that.
Well, as we wrap up today, we know there's need there. Just First Presbyterian, somebody could contact that church, contact Libby at Grace Episcopal, would take possibly in-kind donations, or money could be used, so forth and so on. And also, I assume volunteers.
Yes, indeed.
Do they
Absolutely.
need to be trained? Would you train?
We do an application process for volunteers. That became important this year, more important this year because we had more volunteers than we could actually use. And then we require some form of, what in the Episcopal Church we call safeguarding God's children, some kind of training in that area. And we're developing that. Most of the group did it last year, and then we will continue to build on that. Our curriculum coordinator does a training for the teachers who are going to be working in the learning centers. And we haven't said a lot about the college and high school age counselors, but they're absolutely key to making it a fun event and for having those children see people who are not that much older than themselves who love reading and who love being together as well. And so that's an area we want to develop more in the future, is making it an even more meaningful experience for the college and high school counselors.
I think it would be wonderful if in the reading centers, if there were one trained teacher, but a young person was the aide. In most cases, were two adults, but it would be wonderful if they were the younger people.
Well, this has been a very enlightening program for me today. We've been talking and discussing and learning a lot about a reading camp co-sponsored by Grace Episcopal Church, First Presbyterian Church, Fountain Avenue, Broadway United. Did I miss anybody?
Nope.
Held in July each summer. There's opportunities for help here, monetary, volunteer support. Our guests today have been Nancy Black, Mary Catherine Zellmer, did I get it right? Ann McNeely, and my co-host, the rector of Grace Episcopal Church, Libby Wade. I'm Jim Toy for the Outreach Committee of Paducah Cooperative Ministry. You've been watching Reflections. In mission